Welcome to this week's live show here in Journey to Lasting Love. I am Tina Shayani, your host and the founder of this group, as well as the head coach at T-Shay Coaching, where we help people attract and build lasting, loving relationships. Here we are, ready to jump into this week's topic, overcoming life's disappointments. It's a very important topic, and it is a universal topic that doesn't just apply to relationships. It's a topic that applies to every aspect of life. And when we can live a better life, when we can find ways to be better people and live with life better, that also makes us better at our relationships. So it seems, and it doesn't seem, it actually is, that life is littered with disappointment. There are so many disappointments and hurts and hurdles in life, both big and small. Some things seem so big that we feel that we could never overcome them. And then there are also the little disappointments that we sometimes turn into big problems for ourselves. But the truth of the matter is, good morning, Anna, good morning, Libby. The truth of the matter is that no human life is exempt from difficulty and disappointments. So that is something very important to understand, and it's a big takeaway. Everyone has issues. It's a universal part of being a human being. And I am not exempt, you are not exempt, and nobody is exempt. It does seem like some people have more difficulty than others, and a lot of people feel that their difficulties are the biggest difficulties. And in a way, that is the truth, because our difficulties are so important to us, and they are our challenges, and they are sent to us to make us better. So the very first thing is to not allow the difficulties and the challenges and the big and small disappointments to ruin our life experience. And how do we do that? How can we uh, overcome the challenges of life? And this is one of the greatest things. If we have the ability to do this, it changes everything. It changes life completely. You know, we have all seen people that have the ability to overcome, that life gives them huge challenges that we cannot even imagine having the ability, the capacity to overcome some of these challenges. Yet people do. Yet people do. And then there are other people that have what appears to be very small and limiting challenges, yet those small, limited challenges ruin their entire lives or sabotage their lives, take over their lives. So what can we do to help ourselves to overcome these challenges, the difficulties in life? And it feels very much like a constant stream of curveballs. And when we overcome one thing, the next one comes right immediately, it feels, following it, one curveball after another. So how can we survive this life? How can we thrive in this life that is filled with difficulty and disappointments? Well, the first thing is we have no choice. It is something that we must do. The second thing is to understand that this is part of the human condition, that we are not alone. It is not only me or you that is facing difficulties in life. Every human life has its challenges. We are all going to be disappointed at some point in our lives. We are all going to be in a position of loss. May it be a relationship, a loved one, a job, a career, There are so many ways to be disappointed, and we don't want to dwell on the disappointments and kind of rehash and recount all the terrible things. Where our power comes in is how we react to the disappointments and the difficulties of life, and how we support ourselves and other people when disappointment comes in. So let's talk about that for a moment. What can we do? One, first is to understand that we are not alone, that this is a normal part of being a human being, that it's not a personal vendetta from heaven. God is not out to get you. This is not going to crush you, but this is a part of life. Challenges come in to make us better. And where the choice is, where our power is in our reaction to it. And we've talked about this here before. In one of the world's most famous books, Viktor Frankl's Search for Meaning. He was a psychologist who was in a concentration camp, which is arguably the most difficult situation any human being has ever been in human history, right? I think that's a safe assumption. And what he said is that in the space between suffering, once a terrible thing happens, then there is a space, and that space is for our reaction, and that is where our power lies. So we have a choice when we are faced with disappointment. We can wallow in it, we can jump into the pit of despair, and we can just drown in despair. And once we fall into that pit, it becomes ever so difficult to climb out. And you know what? It's an option. There are sometimes some situations that I look at and I say that why didn't this person just lay down in the pit of despair and just die? It almost feels like the right reaction. Good morning, Grace. It almost seems like, how could any human being survive such a circumstance? So one option is to completely give in to despair and to just lay down and die. But that is not the best option. The better option, the better reaction is to say, okay, this has happened. What meaning can I find in this situation? What is the message? What can I do? I'm reading what Libby says. What are some things you can say to soothe and not feel like the victim? That's a really good question. Thank you for asking that. What are some things we can say to soothe? Well, one thing is that it is universal, that we are not alone, that these terrible things happen to other people as well. And other people have found the strength and the ability to overcome. And that feeling of victimhood is appropriate at some point to kind of go into the sadness and allow people to come into your life and support you when something terrible has happened. It's okay to be in that space of despair and sadness. What's not okay is to stay in that place. So one is, when you are feeling that feeling of victimhood, is to seek love from other people, and not necessarily in a romantic context, but to allow the people in your life to be there for you and to support you. And in that way, that lifts not only you as the person who is the sufferer, but it lifts the person who is supporting you. So we kind of tend to shun people's support, and we want to be independent, and we don't want to take their support. But don't take that opportunity away from the people in your life to support you, because that support lifts you, but it also lifts the person who is doing the supporter. So that is one thing, to allow yourself to be in that feeling Allow yourself to mourn and to be in despair, but don't stay in that feeling. And from there, from that place of victimhood, we look for the next level. We can't go from despair and sadness to joy because it's ridiculous. It's an unrealistic expectation to have of ourselves. But what we can do from that place of extreme pain and disappointment is we can reach for a feeling that's just above that. What can I do to be okay? What can I do to be hopeful for the future? We look at the situation and say, lots of other people have been where I am. Lots of people, every human being in life experiences pain and disappointment. So we know that this is not something that is unique to us. But knowing that other people have had greater pain and greater disappointments doesn't diminish our own pain and disappointment, because that's something that people often say, well, it could be worse. Well, of course, almost everything can be worse, but our pain is our pain. So be okay with feeling that pain and reach for the level that is one step above. Reach for the level. Allow your friends and loved ones to lift you and understand that this pain is temporary. The pain is temporary. Everything changes over time, and we have the ability to go through the pain. We have the capacity to go through the disappointments and get through the disappointments. We know that we have this capacity because we have done it before. We have suffered disappointments before. And the other very important thing is to let go, So you suffered through this great disappointment. You went through a difficult time and a hardship. But what can we do to put it behind us? What can we do? One of the things is to put your focus on what was good in the situation. What did you learn from the disappointment, and how can you grow from that? What can you learn from it? What can you take that will make you better? And know that the pain will not last forever. Nothing lasts forever. No joy lasts forever, and no pain lasts forever. And that's one of the amazing things about being a human being. There is a limit on every hurt and on every joy. Nothing is 100%. And that gives us the ability to live. That gives us the ability to move on. And the other thing is that we have no choice. We have to move on, whether we want to or not. But where our choice comes in is how we are going to move on. Are we going to try and hold on as tight as we can to the disappointment and to the pain, and to keep rehashing it and to keep going through it? Or are we going to look for something positive? I'll share a little story. I was just a few weeks ago at a memorial for a friend of mine that passed away last year. She was 40 years old. She died in a tragic accident. She left behind a wonderful husband and many young children. And her family has taken this tragedy that would really destroy any other human being, and they have turned it. They have turned her life, taken her life. The end of her life was a tragedy, but her actual life was a gift to everyone that knew her. To her husband, he had 16, 17 amazing years with an incredible woman. He has children that are left behind. He has a community that is left behind, and he is doing his best to celebrate the life that he lived with her instead of dwelling on her loss. Instead of just focusing on what he lost, he is focusing on what he had and the gift that she was. And I feel the same way about her. Her loss was was very devastating and painful. But if I want to sit with the loss, it's going to ruin my life. But what I try to focus on is all the lessons that she taught me and the joy that she gave me and the wonderful things that I learned from her and how amazing she was, so that I can better my life, so that I can be better tomorrow and the day after. So you reach for a feeling that is one level up, one level up. And when you are feeling like the victim, we can play the game that we have played before, the gratitude game. It's so simple, but it's so, so powerful that we look for the good in every situation. Even in the ugliest situations, there is always good. The same as how in the most beautiful circumstances you can always find a little ugly, but let's not look for it. But we have the capacity to look for the good even in the harshest circumstances. So Viktor Frankl recalls his time in the camp that there were incidences where the uh, victims, the prisoners, would care for one another in even the smallest ways. A smile to someone else, a nudge. They were able to see a wildflower growing in the distant field, and they put their focus, despite the horror of their situation, on those tiny, tiny, tiny little things. And that's what helps them to survive. And Viktor Frankl says that these are the things, those were the people that were able to survive the horror. The people that found the smallest things to put their focus on, the smallest itty bitty tiny things that were good to put their focus on, to bring them out of the pit of despair. So how to pull yourself out of that feeling of victimhood? Look for the good. Look for the good in the situation. Stop talking about the terrible thing that happened to you and look at where you are today. Look at where you are today, right now, and make a list of the things that are good. Spend your day hunting for the good in life. You heard a nice song. The steering wheel in the car was hot. You had a great cup of coffee. You saw a handsome guy at Starbucks. You didn't talk to him, but you saw him, and looking at him is nice. So very tiny, tiny thing to bring us out of that disappointment and to understand that disappointment happens in every human life. You know, with the movies and TV and the internet, we are sold this idea that we have to be happy all the time and we have to be joyful all the time and that life is supposed to be perfect. It's not true. It's not true. Every life is going to have pain. Every life is going to have disappointment, and every life is going to end. Every life is going to end. So when we have this finite amount of time, what are we going to do with it? Are we going to dwell on the disappointment and be angry about it and let it ruin what we have ahead of us, to kind of spoil what's ahead? Or are we going to say, okay, this happened. What can I learn and how can I move forward? And a very powerful way of moving forward is to look for the good and to appreciate what was good and to turn a bitter circumstance into something good and to let go, to let go. This concept of letting go is such a powerful concept. So something terrible happened to you 5 years ago. Let it stay in the past. Let it stay in 5 years ago. Don't bring it into the present. Don't let what happened before ruin your life today. Let go of that disappointment and say, disappointment is a part of life, but I'm going to move on from this and good things are going to happen to me. And when you are feeling that feeling of anxiety and despair, we repeat the mantra, things are always working out for me. Things are always working out for me. And I cannot tell you the number of times that this mantra has made my life better, has made me able to get through a difficult circumstance. Because the opposite, that looking for disaster, anticipating the worst, makes everything worse, But if we anticipate that things are always working out for me, and we do it in an unspecified way, the world, the universe has a funny way of doing things, and things are often working out in ways different than what we anticipated, different than what we would have liked. But they do have a way of working out if we can take ourselves out of the way and enjoy the moment, the day that we have today, knowing that our time is finite, that every misery is limited by time and every joy is also limited by time. Every misery and every joy will invariably pass. So we are here to make the most of it. It's a little bit of a heavier topic than we usually have here, but this is where I am and I wanted to share it with you. And I'm going to take my own advice and say things are always working out for me. Things are always working out for me. I hope that this was helpful. I hope you got something out of it. If you know someone who would benefit from this content, please invite them to join our group. If you have questions, if you have topics, if you have comments, please let me know. If you're watching on replay and you made it all the way to the end, please leave a comment.